Hey there. Welcome back to Real Talk Counseling Connections, the podcast where we tackle the real, everyday challenges of parenting, mental health, and personal growth. I'm your host, Tamesha, and today we're tackling a topic that's close to my heart, social anxiety in teens. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed your teen dodging social events like skipping a birthday party or avoiding family gatherings? Maybe they've been complaining about stomach or headaches more often, or they seem quieter than usual in small group settings. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Social anxiety in teens can be sneaky, and it's not always easy to spot. But here's the thing. It's not just about being shy or introverted. Social anxiety can feel like a constant storm of worry, fear, and self-doubt. And for parents, it can be heartbreaking to watch your teen struggle, especially when you're not sure how to help them. And that's why today we're breaking it all down. We'll talk about the signs of social anxiety, how it might look different in teens with disabilities, the role of social media, spoiler, it's a double-edged sword, and most importantly, what you can do to support your teen. But before we dive in, I want to take a moment to let you know that while I'll be sharing stories and examples throughout this podcast, any client stories I mention are based on fictionalized scenarios. So this is to protect the privacy and confidentiality of real clients while still providing relatable and meaningful insights. So my goal is to create a safe space for learning and growth, and that starts with respecting boundaries. But yeah, go grab a cup of coffee, take a deep breath, grab your water, and let's get into it. Let's start with the basics. What does social anxiety actually look like in teens? Well, it's not always obvious, and for some teens, it might mean avoiding social situations altogether, like avoiding going to a party, skipping school events in general, or even a family dinner. Well, why? Well, because they fear being judged or embarrassed. So imagine sitting in a room and constantly worrying about saying or doing the wrong thing. It's exhausting, right? And it's not just in social settings. For others, it might show up as a physical symptom like sweating, trembling, or a racing heartbeat. I've even worked with teens who would complain of headaches or stomach aches just to avoid social interactions. It's not because they're trying to be difficult. Their bodies are reacting to that intense stress. And let me share, for an example, a teen whom I'll call Maya. She was bright, funny, and incredibly creative, but she'd often complain of stomach aches before school. And at first, her parents thought she was just trying to get out of class. But the truth, Maya was terrified of being called on in class or having to work on group projects. Her body was literally reacting to the stress of social interactions. And here's the kicker. Teens are masters at hiding what they're feeling. They might say things like, I just don't like parties, or no, I'm fine, when really they're struggling with intense fear of judgment and embarrassment. And this is where masking comes in. You might see a teen sitting quietly in the back of the classroom, seemingly fine, but on the inside, they're using every ounce of energy just to keep it together. It's exhausting, and it's why recognizing these signs is so important. Now, think about how this impacts their daily lives. A teen who's afraid of speaking up in class might struggle with group projects or presentations. This can snowball into their academic performance suffering. Not because they're not capable, but because anxiety is holding them back. And friendships, those can feel so tricky. If the idea of making small talk or joining a group feels terrifying, those important connections can start to fade off too. And on top of that, teens are so good at hiding what they're feeling, which makes it even harder for parents and teachers, caregivers, or anyone to really see what's going on. They'll, hear phrases like, oh, I just don't like parties. No, I'm really fine. I'm just not feeling good today. But beneath that are those deeper struggles. And often it's not until much later that we start putting the pieces together. And then there's masking, as I stated before, which makes things even trickier to spot. You might see a teen just seem to be fine. You might see a teen even interacting with others and they appear fine, right? might seem a little quiet than normal, but they seemingly appear fine. But again, they're pulling every ounce of energy just to keep it together, right? So those struggles are not always going to look the same on the surface for all teens. And this is such a complex challenge for teens because it affects big parts of their lives, their academics, their friendships, their hobbies, and activities they once loved. And these struggles often go unnoticed, leaving teens feeling misunderstood and unsupported. Now, let's talk about teens with disabilities because social anxiety can look and feel really different for them. So take a teen with a speech disorder, for example. They might feel anxious about how they're perceived when they talk, worrying about stuttering or mispronouncing words. And something as simple as introducing themselves in class can feel like climbing Mount Everest. That's why, in a sense, when teachers will point out a call on students who are quiet as if they're not participating. Yeah, they're listening. Well, I won't speak for all, right? They may be listening, but they may struggle or feel nervous about speaking publicly, even in the classroom. And they may have the right answers because oftentimes when they are called on, they know the answers. They're actually paying attention. So, in a sense, it's kind of embarrassing them, but that too speaks to the educators getting to know their students, building that rapport with their students, giving them that opportunity to raise their hand, or letting them know ahead of time, I'm just going to start calling on you guys if you don't raise your hand. So that lets them, that maybe they'll be willing to raise their hand in advance, go ahead and get it on out the way so they could participate. Consider a teen on the autism spectrum. Social settings can be overwhelming. The bright lights, the loud noises, and all those unspoken social rules to navigate. So for them, anxiety might show up as restlessness or even panic. So imagine struggling not just with the fear of social situations, but also the environment itself. And visible physical disabilities bring their own set of worries, right? So a teen in a wheelchair, for instance, might feel hyper aware of being stared at during a school dance or worry about accessibility, things that people who are, able bodies can walk around, can move about. A person who's in a wheelchair, the anxiety isn't just social, it's built into the logistics of their everyday life. And let's not forget about teens with invisible disabilities, such as a chronic illness or fatigue. So they might face anxiety because of their constant need to explain themselves. Imagine needing to bow out of an event because of pain or exhaustion or fear that people will think they're just antisocial or lazy. That can be emotionally draining for those teens as well. So for parents, this adds another layer of a complexity. It's tough seeing your teen face these struggles. Traditional, strategies for managing social anxiety might not always apply. And, that is okay. The key is understanding your teen's unique experience and meeting them where they are. And we'll talk more about what supports can look like, but understanding their experience, truly seeing them, is where it all begins. All right, let's talk about social media. It is such a huge part of teen life. But when it comes to social anxiety, it can be a double-edged sword because it could do more harm than good, right? So on one hand, social media can amplify anxiety. Teens feel pressure to present their lives in the best possible light. Those perfectly curated Instagram posts or TikToks that make it seem like everyone else is having the time of their lives. That can make a teen struggling with social anxiety feel, even more isolated. They'll stare at their phone for hours, obsessing over how many likes or posts a post is getting. And if it doesn't get enough, they delete it. Or they'll avoid posting altogether because of the fear of judgment, and not just in real life, but online too. And let's not even get started on FOMO, or fear of missing out. Seeing all those events and parties they weren't invited to is like fuel to the fire of their anxiety. But here's the thing. Social media isn't all bad. For some teens, especially those with severe social anxiety, online spaces can feel safer. They can communicate behind the screen without the pressure of face-to-face interaction. But, and this is a big but, it can also make it harder to build the skills they need for those in-person connections when they meet a person out in the environment, in their natural environment or in the community. It's tough because the longer they rely on those online interactions, the scarier real world socializations can feel. The challenge is finding that balance, right? So helping teens set those boundaries, like limiting screen time or having specific unplugged hours, for example, can make a world of difference. It's amazing how those little changes, like spending just an hour away from their screen to play a game board or take a walk, can ease some of that constant comparison stress. And when they start to see that life online doesn't have to be perfect, it can help ease some of that constant comparison stress as well. So at the heart of it, though, social media amplifies what's already there. So if a teen is feeling anxious about how they're perceived, those feelings won't just stay in the classroom or at the mall. They'll follow them onto their screens. And if we're not careful, those platforms can turn into mirrors that show them exactly what they're afraid of instead of who they really are. So what can parents do to help? Or what can teachers do to help? Or what can a caregiver do to help, right? So first and foremost, create a safe space for your teen to open up. The key here is keeping those conversations judgment-free. You want to listen, validate their experience, and let them know it's okay to feel the way they do. That little bit of reassurance can go such a long way. And when it comes to tackling social situations, think gradual exposure. What do I mean by that, you might ask? Well, let's say your teen feels anxious about group settings. Start small. Maybe invite 1 or 2 friends over for a movie night or board game. The idea is to take those baby steps towards those bigger, more challenging scenarios. And the goal is to help your teen feel a little bit more comfortable over time. And let me just say that if anxiety feels like it's just too much to handle as a family, there's absolutely no shame in reaching out for professional help, because some parents don't know how to help their child who's struggling with that social anxiety, especially if they are an extrovert themselves, they being the parents. If they're an extrovert, they may find it really difficult to help their teen navigate these situations if their teen is completely opposite of them and prefer to spend that time to themselves or just anxious about those social settings. But a good therapist can help your teen explore those feelings and figure out what triggers their anxiety and then give them the tools to build confidence and resilience. Therapy can make a huge difference. Just have to reach out and find that right therapist for your teens. So now we've talked about teens broadly, but I want to spend a moment on those with a disability because their challenges can look a little different. And so for some teens, social anxiety connects directly to their disability, whether it's managing sensory overload, dealing with stigma, or relying on assistive tools in social settings. So for teens with disabilities, advocacy and inclusion are key. Whether it's pushing for accommodations at their school or helping them prepare scripts for social settings or situations, every effort counts. Whatever eases that burden and makes them feel empowered to participate is a step in the right direction. And parents or caregivers and teachers, don't forget to take care of yourself too. It's so helpful to relearn and connect with resources designed for situations like these. And if you're looking for a place to start, I always recommend checking out the Affinity Counseling Connections website, where they offer so much valuable information, and it's a great way to continue exploring what we've talked about today. All right, that's it for today's episode. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Real Talk Counseling Connections and share it with a friend. Let's keep that conversation going. Drop me a comment or DM on Instagram at Affinity Counseling Connections and tell me your biggest takeaway from the day. Remember, parenting isn't about having all the answers. It's about just showing up, listening, and taking thoughtful action. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm so glad you're here. Until next time, take care of yourselves and your teens. See you soon.